Hi, I'm John F. Allen,
And I'm R.J. Sullivan.
and we're the Two Towers.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Two Towers Talk Show. This will be our first show, our first episode in the series. I'm Tower 1 of the Two Towers, John F. Allen, and joining me is R.J. Sullivan, Tower 2.
That's right, I'm Tower 2, R.J. Sullivan. And as I was going to say, I imagine somewhere in 2019, 2020, someone's going through our dozens of shows and trying to find the first one, and you have found it. And you've probably enjoyed all the improvements we've made since, but you get to sit through our very first one now, and I'm excited to be here, John.
As am I, RJ. And to those viewing the show, the subject of the first show, which aptly, in my mind, is Deadpool the movie. Both RJ and myself saw the film together. We both liked it, and we'll give you our general reactions first. So I guess I'll start since I'm talking right now. My general reaction to the film was that I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it on a multitude of levels. I was really impressed with the way the direction of the film went. I was also impressed with the writing and the acting within the film for what it was. I think it hit on all cylinders. It had depth. It was extremely funny. It was very raunchy. Don't take your kids to see this. But it hit on all of those cylinders, and it did not let up at all. And I mean, given the budget, which we'll get into a little bit later, I mean, it was just really an amazing feat to hit on all cylinders like that. What do you think, RJ?
Well, I think my reaction, and I'm going to have a follow-up for you, but I came at it knowing very little about Deadpool.
Mm-hmm.
I am generally a Marvel fan. I've not been collecting comics in the last few years. Deadpool's interest in the comic realm has kind of hit in the last decade or so more often. And so I knew very little about the character going in. I knew a lot more about the movie hype. And following up what you have said, they made a big deal out of the fact that it is rated R. It earns its R rating. You're going to get all the extreme violence and the cursing and other things that you would expect from an R-rated movie. Having said that, as R-rated movies go, and I say this without apology, if I happen to have seen a lot of R-rated movies growing up. I grew up in the 80s during the slasher era. Make of that what you will. And it's not an extreme kind of R rating. They did it. They wanted to distinguish it from a PG-13 movie, and I think they did. And so, in that regard, yes, do not take your children. It's going to give you a lot of that, and the hype is true. But what surprised me as someone who knows almost nothing about Deadpool outside of very general observations is how much heart and how much the love story played, and the fact that what's not really getting a lot of discussion is that emotional center that I thought worked extremely well and was very surprising. Marina Baccarin, I hope I'm saying her name right, is no stranger to genre fiction. She started out in Firefly and was in Homeland later in the V series. Is the romantic interest in here and really stepped up, really delivered. I was very impressed. So my question to you, John, that you haven't quite talked about yet, is someone who has expectations about Deadpool and who understands his history. Can you talk a little bit more about what was brought or not brought?
Okay, yeah, certainly. I do have a history with the character. I remember when he first debuted in New Mutants back in the early 90s, I do believe it was. I'm not sure the exact date, but he was always the merc with the mouth. And that in and of itself was portrayed very deftly by Ryan Reynolds. He had that same swagger as the comic book character as he was portrayed in the comics. He had that quirky wit, that inane humor And breaking the fourth wall there was an absolute must for the character, as that's what he does in the comics. And that's what makes him so well known amongst the comic fans. People who read the comics with Deadpool as the main character. This film did an excellent job of portraying that. All the quirkiness, all the wackiness, all the breaking of the fourth wall, all the seriousness of the fact that this guy is a mercenary. He's not a touchy, friendly, huggable type person. He may have a lot of crazy humor and whatnot, but he is a very dangerous individual. He's a very violent individual, and that blending, as it was portrayed by Ryan Reynolds in the film, it was like it was just ripped right out of the comics. I mean, I watching the film, it was as close to perfect in the way in which he captured the complete essence of the character from what I've read in the comics as you could possibly get with any character, I think.
And without getting into spoiler territory, one of the things I really enjoyed was the breaking of the fourth wall, where he was actually commenting on the production sometimes, and so there were some moments where he would talk about some of the budget constraints, and it really made for some amusing surprises, something I'm sure that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do in the comic as well, but it worked really well for me. I thought that was very entertaining and a lot of fun to see a movie that was aware of itself and could comment on itself as the show went on. So, do we want to get a little bit more into the generalities before we get into spoilers, go to our ratings, or?
I guess we can go into the generalities just a bit more. I would like to say that when I heard that the movie was going to be R-rated, it was of no surprise to me. As a matter of fact, I don't think you can do this character in a PG setting for a standalone film. The character can appear in other films within the X-Men franchise, and it still be PG-13. You just have to probably bleep out what he says. He can still break that fourth wall, which is proven with the, which is not a spoiler here if you've seen the trailer, that the other X-Men characters appeared in the film. So you can do that, but I think with a standalone Deadpool movie, you are definitely going to get that R rating. It's necessary for who the character is and what he does, and seeing them stay true to the character in that regard was very refreshing, in my opinion. And then an overall tone of the movie fit that very well.
Yeah, and 2 points following up on that. Number one, the movie knew what it was. They knew they were going to go for the hard R. And yet that wasn't the whole thing going on, and that's what I really appreciated. They knew that to tell their story, they needed to go there, but it wasn't RoboCop rated R, to point to the original RoboCop, which has scenes that, although it is one of my favorite movies, I think pushes it so far certainly into the violence area that it's fairly disturbing. I think there are a couple of moments here that are, again, get a little difficult to watch, but for the most part, as our ratings go, it's middle of the road, because it doesn't have to be any more than that. And I like the fact that Marvel overall seems to have a solid sense of the identity of their movies, and they knew that they were taking a risk, thinking possibly it wouldn't work, thinking it might not make as much money as some of their other movies, and yet making the choice to take that risk. And that brings us around to how did that pay off for them, John?
It paid off very well, but one thing to definitely note with this is that because this movie, what going off your point with the risk and everything, what goes off that point is the fact that this film is not a part of the Marvel Studios franchise films. It is still a Fox film, but the fact that not a lot of people knew that, and based upon the box office success of this film and the fact that a lot of people didn't know it was a Fox film and maybe thought it was a Marvel Studios film, I think helped its success in a lot of ways. Marvel certainly didn't squawk about it as they shouldn't. It is, after all, their character, despite the fact that it is licensed to another studio, it is a Marvel Comics character. So if Fox is going to do the character right, then of course Marvel's going to be all about that. And I mean,
they embraced it. Yeah.
Right, they embraced it. And as when we get into the spoilers, which we will in just a moment, I'll point out some of the things that Fox did to kind of give a wink and nod to the Marvel Studios films and to Marvel Comics in general. So, with that, we're going to go into the spoiler territory. And this is a warning. If you have not yet seen Deadpool, which I don't know why you haven't seen Deadpool if you haven't at this point, but if you haven't seen Deadpool,
because you're too young.
Yes, that if you're too young, yes, that my 11-year-old son has the same problem. He has to wait a few years before he's allowed to see it.
That's what Blu-rays are for.
That's right. Sucks to be him right now. But anyway, if you have not seen Deadpool, then this is the point where you need to stop and go see Deadpool. And then come back and watch this episode, or fast forward through.
Go to this. What's going to be on the screen right now?
Go to this frame point, and then from that point, then you'll be able to enjoy the rest of the show. But yes, if you haven't seen it and you don't want the movie spoiled, then stop right now. If you don't care and you've already seen the movie, then let's move forward.
Yep, the spoilers are about to begin.
That's right. So, we're going to do our in-depth analysis and breakdown of Deadpool. And one of the great things about this film, in my opinion at least, was the casting. The casting was really great. Of course, Ryan Reynolds was an all-time favorite to play this film, as he had portrayed the character in the Wolverine X-Men Origins, which screwed the character up royally. They really did not understand the character they had in Wade Wilson. The very beginning of that film, they portrayed him spot on. Then they screwed him up.
I have no recollection really of most of that movie. I did not remember that Deadpool was in there or that he was played by Ryan Reynolds until I caught it on some video last week or something. I was like, he's done him before. Okay, so
well, it's probably a good thing that you didn't remember it.
Probably so.
I mean, because it was definitely not doing the character any service or any justice at all, and fans can attest to that based upon the ratings.
So this is kind of Ryan Reynolds' comeback film after Green Lantern. I remember when Green Lantern came out, there was high expectation that Ryan Reynolds was going to nail it, and I'm not sure people blame him for its failure. It seems like fans are very forgiving of his part in that. But do you know much about Ryan's or Miss? I guess like I know him, right? Mr. Reynolds' involvement in Deadpool, and it seems like this was a personal project for him.
Yes, it was definitely a personal project for Ryan Reynolds. He actually championed this film being made, which for about 10 years from the time that the Wolverine's X-Men Origins film had been released and had basically screwed up the character in its entirety almost. A lot of fans were clamoring to see Deadpool done right, and Ryan Reynolds was a champion of that, and I think that the fans were able to see him in that role. Like I said, from the beginning of the Wolverine movie, it was spot on, and you knew that Ryan Reynolds was born to play Deadpool, and they just jacked up the character towards the end of the film. That being said, I think the fans knew that Ryan Reynolds was the guy that should play Deadpool, and he knew that he wanted to give the fans what they wanted because he didn't think that the direction they went in with the character in the Wolverine film was good either. So, being a champion of that, he was pushing for this, and I think that the Fox Studios was dragging their feet in regards to this because it wasn't Wolverine, it wasn't any of the more well-known X-Men characters from the franchise. So they went ahead and they put together some test footage, and somebody leaked it. And they leaked it.
I remember when that was a big deal.
Yeah, they leaked it online, and the fans went nuts, and I'm one of them. I was like, yeah, this movie needs to be made, and so I think that fans pressuring from seeing that release of that test footage, along with Ryan Reynolds champion the cause, gave Fox enough pause to say, hey, maybe we need to throw the fans a bone here. And
to be fair, they didn't make a huge investment out of it. I mean,
right.
$58 million budget. They knew even if it didn't do overly well, they were probably going to get their money back.
Right.
So and that was the way they went about it, which
right.
I think is smart.
Right, definitely smart. Minimal investment, minimal loss. If in fact it would have been a loss, but of course we all know it was not. Yes, but I personally, in getting touching into that just briefly here, before we go back through the portrayal of the characters by the other actors in the film, I wasn't surprised that it made as much as it did its initial weekend, because I knew as a fanboy I was clamoring for this film. And even if it was just mediocre, just seeing Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool done right in regards to how the character was portrayed would have been enough to have at least made me feel good.
Yeah, and I think I want to clarify when I said surprise, I mean, it's kind of sarcastic because I think the studios I think Fox was probably genuinely surprised, but I don't think the fans were. I don't think the general audiences were all that surprised. I think it's one of those cases where nobody knew. The studios didn't know what the audience did. Mm-hmm. The audience knew they wanted this movie all along. They knew they wanted an option for a movie like this. And I'm going to come back to a point about that. But the fact that it has done so ridiculously well since it came out is not necessarily a surprise to the general audience. I think it just goes to show that this was a viable option. As a longtime horror movie fan, and I know you're familiar with it as well, how many movies get cut from R to PG-13 because they don't think there's an audience for R-rated horror movies, which is probably one of the dumber things I've ever heard from Hollywood. But we get these PG-13 cuts for things that, now they're finally starting to put R-rated horror films back out. And what do you know? The audiences are there, huh?
Right.
But this was a case where apparently they were extremely surprised that it's done as well as it has, and is continuing, because I didn't double check, but it was estimated to be the number one at the end of the weekend. I gather that's where it fell, right?
Yeah, third week is number one in the box office.
Third week in a row.
That's now. With that being said, as a third consecutive week at number one, the competition for this film, some of those movies were, pretty decent. One of them is actually an Oscar contender, which we'll get back into later. So this opened against and was out against a Academy Award nominated film and still beat it. Mm-hmm. And let's be honest, Deadpool's not going to get an Academy Award nomination. But for it to have surpassed an Academy Award nominated film at the box office, and I mean not just by, one spot,
yes,
then this says something about this film and how it resonated with the fans and the people who went to go see it. We'll get in a little bit more into the actual specific numbers in just a moment. But one of the things that I wanted to do before we did that, RJ, was to talk about the other characters in the film and the other actors who portrayed them. Next one out, Ryan Reynolds did a good job. We both agree with that. And the fans, he resonated with the fans. To get back to Morena Baccarin, though, she played Vanessa Carlyle, which was the fiance of Deadpool, Wade Wilson.
Yes, the romantic interest of the film.
Yes.
I was surprised by her performance. It was a risky role to take because at one point she's the damsel in distress. During the climax of the film, she's the person to be rescued. But before then, their relationship starts off as a potential one-night stand that then turns more long-term, which gives us the excuse to have all the ridiculous sex scenes. And when I say ridiculous, I don't mean graphic, because they weren't necessarily. But one thing I want to point out is that there's a really interesting humor to the movie, and the fact that they approached the sex as funny. And really, it was a parody of all those sex scenes in the '80s that we've all sat through, as teenagers and 20-somethings, that were almost like, well, we got to have these scenes here, and they did that, but they were making fun of it a great deal, and I thought that was a good choice because it brought a lot of giggles and laughter to something that seemed like something that could have just been on the checklist just to get rid of.
Right.
And then from there, it got very sweet, and that surprised me. Their relationship. I guess we'll just get into some of the spoilers that we've been warning you about.
Right.
Deadpool. Wade Wilson finds out he has stage 4 cancer, which is and it was basically like you basically have like 3 to 4 months to live, and that is it. And so he had just proposed to her. They were going to start a life together, and so this was a part where Vanessa could have said, "Okay, well, we're done." In fact, that's what Wade tries to do. But this was where the acting and the performance of her commitment to him during that time, even though she doesn't get to really follow through on that, she chooses that she's going to stand by him and take care of him, and she makes that choice, which is a very difficult choice for anybody who knows anyone for it. I'm so glad I've not experienced that directly, but I've known people who have to make that choice. It's not an easy one to make.
Yeah.
And to take on a topic that serious and make it a part of the film, make that a part of this relationship where my opinion about the character turned, where it was like, oh, they really are serious about each other. And that provided a real sweetness to the rest of the movie from that point forward, because she drops out of the movie for a while, and then at the end, the villains kidnap her, but then she still has to make the choice about whether to get back with him or not. And it's all done extremely well, and I think the comedy with the romance as a part of this overall hard R motion picture, I think is what people are really have responded to, because they have not made as much of it in the advertising, and yet it's there, and I think it's what provides the heart of the film.
Right. Another thing in regards to what you just said as far as the advertising is concerned, this film had one of the best marketing strategies of any film I've ever seen. It did have a billboard that coined this as a romance, and for the fact that it came out on Valentine's Day weekend was another thing that kind of foreshadowed the romance in the film. When it comes to the chemistry between Ryan Reynolds and Morena Baccarin, I think that in and of itself was fantastic. But then, like you said, the way that it was acted, the level of commitment that these characters had for one another, you bought it. it wasn't something that was forced on you. It wasn't something that, oh, well, of course he has to have a love interest or whatnot. She became an integral part of who he was and vice versa. And this was something that the audience believed. In the midst of all these zany comedy and all the other things and all the all-color jokes or whatnot.
Some dark stuff, too.
And some dark things. You believe that these two characters were in love, that they had each other's backs, and that they were down for whatever, to coin the phrase "ride or die." That was their relationship.
And then when, at a certain point, Wade disappears and is just gone.
Yes.
Her feelings of betrayal at that really came through, where she, of course, she questions her commitment at that point, and you feel betrayed with her, even though he had been kind of taken against his will and he was just gone for months. But you understand why she is so upset when she finds out that he's been alive all these months. I thought that just came through so well. I really enjoyed that part of it.
Yes, and the pacing, as we get into how this worked, the pacing of the film was really great, I think. I was not bored at all. It was not told linear. There was some flashbacks and things that were woven into the film as it unfolded, but you never, or at least I never felt like I was taken out of the moment. It was never something that just distracted me to the point where I was like, taken out of the film. And from that point, after they meet and they've been together, there's a scene of them engaging in sex every month of the calendar year.
It's like the holidays, yeah.
Right.
All the holiday sex.
Right, it's all the holiday sex, which was...
Especially the Thanksgiving one.
Right,
so
right.
Leave it at that.
Right. We won't go into the graphic details of all that, but to say it is very funny. And they played the music in the background was Calendar Girl.
Right.
And so you're getting all these... It just fit.
Probably tells you everything you need to know about the movie.
That's right. There. Yeah. That's right.
That's the tone. That's the tone they went for, and it's throughout the entire 90 minutes. Yeah.
That's right. And then when he proposes, and after she accepts, he falls out. They go to the doctor. They find out that he's got stage 4 cancer, and it's inoperable, and that he's going to die. He's dealing with his mortality and how that's going to have an effect on Vanessa. He is approached by a strange character portrayed by an actor who looked like Sheldon Cooper on crack. That's all I can say about how this actor looked. No disrespect to the actor, but that was just an observation. And he was supposed to look creepy, so he knows it. But anyway, the organization that this character worked for approached Wade and said, "We can cure you of your cancer. We can make you into a super powerful superhero type person. All you had to do is contact us, and we'll put you through this program or whatnot." Well, Wade wrestled with this idea, and he thought about it, and he left. He left Vanessa so that he could become a part of this program. Mm-hmm. In the comics, it was like a version of the Weapon X. They didn't touch upon that aspect of it in the movie, but you kind of get the idea. And so he goes to submit himself to these experiments or whatnot that are supposed to cure him of the cancer, save his life, which was his main goal in this, so that he and Vanessa could be together and live out their lives. And then enters Ed Skrein, the actor Ed Skrein, as the character Ajax. And from the comics, the character has been altered a little bit, but Ajax is one of the scientists there, and he is the head of this this program. And Wade is basically held there in this program against his will at this point, and experimented on brutally. I mean, this is, if you've seen X-Men or Wolverine X-Men Origins, what they did to Logan in that movie was brutal. But imagine them doing things like that and worse to someone who didn't have Logan's healing factor to begin with.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it was very brutal.
They present Ajax, the name of the doctor. I don't know the actor, at least unless John says something that jogs my memory. I wasn't overly familiar with him, but I mean he's a sadistic character, and then Wade does probably the dumbest thing he could do, which was to kind of taunt him while
Yes.
he's strapped down on the bed, and then at that point now it's about how much can I make this person hurt, which sets up the next several minutes where the movie really does get kind of brutal for the next 10 minutes or so, where you have to watch and realize that we're telling the story from the point of view of someone who's strapped down and helpless and can't do anything about what's going to be done to him, and eventually things turn around and he gets his power and momentum back, but for a while it gets it gets pretty tough. Although I appreciated the fact that even though he was well into the situation, he was never broken. I mean, he still had the comeback when he needed the comeback, and he still was gonna. He made the decision to tough out whatever was gonna be thrown at him and just wait for his opportunity. I have no comment on the performance except it needed to be what it was. It worked out just fine. So I thought that actor did well, but I was unfamiliar with him. So.
And he hasn't been in much in terms of roles. So
this was a good opportunity for him.
Right. This was definitely something that was a good opportunity for the actor. But to lead off of what you were saying in regards to the character, of course, if you know Deadpool, if he hadn't mouthed off to him, he wouldn't have been Deadpool.
Sure.
So
right.
that in and of itself, yes, he did do a dumb thing. But then again, Deadpool's not known for doing the best things in his best interest all the time, which is what makes the character who he is.
Right.
So from that point, then they're trying to unlock the mutant gene. Apparently, in the mythos of this film, everyone has the mutant gene. It's just whether or not it gets activated through puberty, like with the X-Men, or whether or not it's artificially activated, which is the case with Wade Wilson. And he's subjected to some brutal experimentation, and eventually he has his mutant gene unlocked. However, it has an adverse side effect. The cancer is cured. His healing factor is basically increased to the point to where he can regenerate limbs. Problem is that it horribly disfigures him, and I don't just mean his face. All over his body is just like a wrinkled prune, and you get a lot of humor about that after the fact. So from that point, then he knows these people are going to torture him, try and brainwash him, try and make him into a weapon against his will. So he has to escape, and he does so. And when he does, he comes back to his best friend Weasel, who was portrayed by T.J. Miller. Mm-hmm. And I think T.J. Miller did a great job as Weasel in this particular film. The comedy, the back and forth between the two was awesome.
An actor who looked familiar to me. I didn't take the time to look him up, but I certainly enjoyed the character here, and I enjoyed the performance, and he certainly provided a lot of the humor and the tone. He was a lot of fun. Sort of the part best friend, part sidekick on occasion, and the buddy he could go to for advice when he needed it, and yet he recognized Wade for who he was, and a lot of, again, provides a lot of potential for humor. So I definitely enjoyed watching the interaction between those two, and it comes up several times throughout the film. They have a lot of fun scenes together.
Right, and one of the things about Weasel was that he ran a bar where a lot of assassins and tough guys went, and they had a Deadpool, which was, who's going to die. And it was like up on a board or
You
whatnot.
were warned about spoilers.
Yes, you were. And so that is where Wade frequents. As a matter of fact, it's actually where Wade met Vanessa.
Right.
But anyway, so Wade escapes and he goes back to the bar and he's like in a hoodie and he's like, telling Weasel what happened. And Weasel gets a look at him with his disfigured face and he's like, wow, you look like an avocado had sex with an older avocado, or something along the lines of a Shar-Pei, or Freddy Krueger had sex with a topographical map of Utah. And, these scenes were just hilarious. I mean, the banter between them.
Were those actual lines from the...
Yes, those were actual lines from the movie.
I believed it. I just didn't remember exactly.
But you see the level of commitment that Weasel as a character had to Wade, because despite all that, he was still on his side, even though he was loyal to his friends, and so that was good. And to mention the character, to the actor T.J. Miller, he did a lot of work with the How to Train Your Dragon series. As a matter of fact, he played the character Tough Nut. He was the voice for Tough Nut in the in that series. So that's probably where you probably heard his voice before.
Yeah, probably.
Anyways, so he's Wade is trying to think, how am I going to get, my revenge on these people for doing this to me? One other note, as far as the plot goes, Ajax taunted Wade and said that he could reverse the effects of the disfigurement. So this was one of the reasons why Wade was so hell-bent on getting back at him, not just for the fact of what he did, but the fact of him reversing what he did or forcing him to do that.
Right.
And so he had to try and find Ajax, who had went missing. When Wade escaped the facility, he basically blew it up, and so Ajax went underground. So Wade had to try and find Ajax, and he was trying to think of a name, and he's trying to think of a way in which to disguise himself to do this. And then he looked up at the board and he realized, Deadpool, and that's where he got his name from, looking at the board, the Deadpool that they actually had up in the bar. And so what's funny is it's like typical superhero stuff, like with Spider-Man or whatnot. He made this like homemade costume, and it was like really goofy looking. And, at first it was white, and then, he would get shot and blood would be all over him or whatnot. And then, he realized that's not going to work. So that's why his character's in a red costume, because it doesn't show up the blood. And he was basically murking people trying to find out, where Ajax was, and then eventually he finds out. But he also had to wrestle with the fact of, was he going to confront Vanessa and let her know that he was still alive?
Right. And eventually it goes there, and then it's a revenge film for the second half, and then also coming back to the original. Romantic interest. She gets back into the story, and the villain, in typical villain fashion, takes advantage of that relationship to turn it into a race against the clock for your climax, which I thought worked extremely well. Those are the type of tropes that can be kind of risky because they're so easy to kind of fall back on when you want to move your story along. But I thought they managed to make it very organic and make it work. And because the movie wasn't taking itself entirely seriously, it just went, this is working for me. I know I've seen this before, and I have a pretty good idea how it's going to end, but it didn't take away any of the enjoyment of experiencing it this time.
Right. And then to touch upon two other characters within the film, one being Blind Al, who was portrayed by Leslie Uggams. She was basically a blind older lady who Deadpool had pretty much insinuated himself into living with her.
They were roommates.
They were roommates, yes. And he pretty much protected her, and she gave him a place to stay. And they had this really weird dynamic of a relationship. you could tell they really cared about each other in one sense, but then in another sense they got on each other's nerves.
I kind of saw that as kind of building up a sequel of some sort. Like they have plans for later, and I'm interested to see where that's going to go because it wasn't fully developed. I enjoyed what was there. Again, as someone who has no other experience with the character, I was like, okay, she's good. I really hope they don't take it the wise mentor that gets killed by the bad guys at some point. I halfway expected that might happen in this movie, and it didn't, and I'm glad. But it's like they were kind of positioning her as kind of the Yoda master who's going to teach the character some new things. But we all know that never goes well for the mentor later on in those kind of movies.
Right. That trope does not end well for the mentor at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Blind Al is a character from the comics, so it was great. I think Leslie Uggams did a really good job. There was great chemistry between Ryan Reynolds.
She didn't have a lot to work with. She did very well.
Right. Her scenes were limited, but when she was on screen, you paid attention, and that's what That's more than what you get normally, and that's all you can really, the most you can expect from a side character like that. The other two characters that I wanted to mention, Brianna Hildebrand, she played Negasonic Teenage Warhead, which was a young mutant who resided at the Xavier Manor for the X-Men headquarters. And she was there with Colossus, who also actually appeared in this film as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think I'm gonna ape something that I heard on a review show that I like called Half in the Bag. It's like they picked possibly the most obscure X-Men that they could possibly throw in there that they figure almost no one has heard of before to kind of play the. I saw her as kind of the person in the middle between Deadpool's anarchy and Colossus's moral center.
Right.
And someone who could kind of comment on both, but someone that is somewhat a general audience type person. In this case, it did apply to me because I don't know anything about this character. I thought she did a good job of kind of like, well, I'm kind of leaning towards Colossus right now, but as I go along now, I'm kind of leaning more towards Deadpool's point of view.
Right.
And so I think as a role that character was there to fill, I thought that she did a really good job. She had some interesting powers in the fight that were kind of neat to see. I have more history with Colossus. Of course, he was a big deal in the 80s when I was collecting X-Men books. And I thought they did a fantastic job with him. And again, the role he plays in the movie is to kind of speak to the traditional hero ideas so that there is a running commentary about, well, you should not be killing these people because you're a hero and you should be doing better. And so he's saying all the things that you would expect if you're an audience member watching, Batman or Superman, sort of the commentary you'd be having in your head. Colossus is there to kind of comment on the fact that Deadpool's not going to do these things while he's there. You really should not be doing that, and you just killed him and didn't have to. And I thought that worked really, really well because it gave Deadpool a foil to go up against, and also show how this movie was going to be different.
Right.
Those were some good choices, I thought.
Right, they were, and I mean, with just to give you a little idea, Negasonic Teenage Warhead is like a young teenage girl with a chip on her shoulder.
Sure, and that's what she is in this movie.
Right,
Yeah.
And so that being said, that was one of the things that you were dealing with. Deadpool actually asked them for help when he goes to confront Ajax, who, by the way, when I told you I would get back into how there was a wink and nod to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, when Colossus, Negasonic Teenage Warhead, and Deadpool show up to confront Ajax, he has his men all on what looks like a shield helicarrier. And this is a wink and nod to the Marvel universe, the Marvel Studios universe. Right. They don't come out and say it. There were no shield markings, but you kind of get the picture. Right. That was one of the things. Then it ends in a showdown, which eventually you have to take in consideration, you've got Colossus, who's this high moral ground. You're a hero. You should not be killing people.
And then you knew he was going to.
Right, and you knew Deadpool was going, because that's who he's true to his character, and so he ends up killing Ajax. And
I must say, I consider myself to have a somewhat of a moral center, but in the case of Ajax, frankly, he had some killing coming. And that's a conversation we're going to kind of get into here, because I am of the belief that there are some people who are evil.
Yes,
you can disagree with you. You're free to disagree with me if you want, but they show through their actions who they are as a person. And I think in the case of Ajax particularly, they made it very clear he had done things to people before. He had every intention of doing things to people again, given the opportunity. And he had that opportunity. And as soon as he was done here, he was going to go right back to what he was doing, which is essentially torturing people very slowly. And in most cases, they were going to die. Right. So, I don't see a big chance to reform someone in this case. And it's like, frankly, I thought they made a very strong case for Deadpool to say, you know what, the world's better off without him. And it's personal anyway, so you're not going to stop me from doing this. I thought it played well for it was a risk. They set it up well, and I had no issue with that choice when it came up.
I agree. I agree on all those points. And before we lead into the to that and how it relates to this franchise and maybe other franchise, I would like to say that this film has a lot of box office mojo. It, as I said before, is in its third consecutive week at the #1 spot in the box office. Right now, we're at 600 million plus worldwide for the earnings on this film. And again, that's huge considering the fact that it was like 58 million to make. So
big win.
That was a big win. This film, in regards to the R rating, also I want to touch on this. It meets the expectations of any R-rated film. It's generally not going to be too intense for people who have seen R-rated films, specifically action films. You could go back through the 80s. It's a slightly more graphic than some of those, but not anything that's just going to be you're going to be like, oh my God,
It was your typical Arnold Schwarzenegger action flick level for the most part.
Right,
I didn't find anything in there that freaked me out.
Right.
It wasn't an edgy R rating for those that can make that distinction. Right.
And it earned its R rating, but it wasn't something that was just like, oh my God, I just don't know if I can handle this. If you know what to look for and you're expecting this. But as far as predictions on future Deadpool franchise and how it relates to the other Marvel properties at Fox, I think that your Deadpool's going to stay R-rated. Your X-Men are going to stay PG-13. Now, there's going to be some blurring in between. Fox is talking about making the third Wolverine movie R-rated, and I think that with that kind of character, that could go either way. Given the fact that given the fact that the violence of the character kind of says, okay, well, yeah, you could definitely make it an R-rated. It doesn't necessarily mean that because it's an R-rated, you're going to see a lot of gore either, though. It could just be the violence of the character. It's really, I'm mixed about that too, but it's all in how they portray the film. If they do it right, and they do it because the story dictates that it's an R rating, then yes, go ahead. But if they're forcing an R rating where it's not necessary, then I don't agree with that. Now, to just a tidbit of little information on the last Wolverine film, The Wolverine, they made an R-rated release, digital and DVD release, right. And I watched it, and it didn't take me out of the story. As a matter of fact, it added to the fight scenes. That film would have probably been better, with the exception of the ending, would have been better as an R-rated film, just because of who the character is. But let's just say, trying to make a Spider-Man R-rated movie, there's no reason for that, and it's just utterly absurd given who the character is.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to I've talked about Half in the Bag once already. They're one of my favorite review shows. Mike and Jay pretty well came right out and said, because of Deadpool, studios are now, they're smelling money, I think was how he put it. It's like, you're going to see everybody go back and try and retool everything that they think might possibly fall into an R rating. So we're going to go from everyone shying away from R-rated films in the superhero genre to now trying to shove as much stuff into the R-rated box as possible, whether it should be there or not. And they pretty much came to the conclusion that us fans are going to be stuck in the middle, and we're just going to have to sit and watch it for a while. Do you think it's going to go that way?
I think for some it will, but for the majority, I don't think it's going to just be an all-out, we're just going R type situation. And I say that to say, I would be genuinely surprised, and to say, my opinion is it's not going to happen, but I would be very, very genuinely surprised if you get a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie that has an R rating, which would feature any of their characters like Thor, Captain America. I don't think Disney's going to allow that to happen.
It wouldn't, yeah, and that's true. I wasn't thinking about the fact that Marvel has control of its own properties on a lot of their characters, so that probably less so there.
You're gonna have your edgier stuff from Marvel, the Cinematic Universe, on Netflix, which is where it should be. The edgier stuff, and even then, it's not a R-rated material. It's more like a mature 14 material. It's a hard mature 14 material that's on Netflix. So don't think it's just fluff at all. It's very much darker than what you see in the films. But it's not, even that is not your R-rated material. I think that you are going to see people try and jump on the R-rated bandwagon, but I don't think it's going to be Marvel Cinematic Universe, at least not in the movies that Disney is producing.
I would like to see Hollywood make wise choices and realize they have some opportunities here, rather than, as they tend to do, try and fit everything into one box, which has not worked out so well in the past. I generally tend to be optimistic. I would like to think this is going to be a good thing and open it up to being able to tell better stories, more interesting stories than we've had so far. I'm going to remain optimistic and hope that they look at the material with discernment and realize what needs to go where. If that'll happen or not, I don't know, but I'm hopeful.
Well, one of the things to keep in mind about filmmaking, specifically with action films and genre films like this, is that they shoot a lot of stuff off the bat that is going to give them an R rating, specifically when it's dark characters. What they do is they see how much they can keep so that they don't get that R rating. And hopefully they'll be able to keep that stuff that they really want and still get the PG-13 or just right at the R if it calls for it. So that being said, that leads into new news, relatively new news that came out last week, dealing with Batman vs. Superman, and the fact that they announced that they're going to have an R-rated version of the film, even though it hasn't come out yet, released on DVD when it does in fact come out on DVD. Now, being as Batman vs. Superman, obviously it's not going to be like any graphic sex. It's not going to be people's heads exploding, more than likely. Chances are it's just going to be a lot more explosions, a lot more, kind of nuances in regards to violence as far as the characters fighting and stuff like that.
I have a hard time figuring out what that will be.
Yeah, I think it's the stuff that was on the cutting room floor that they're kind of patching in. I don't really have a real burning desire to see it.
Right. The R-rated version.
The R-rated version. I'm hyped for the movie.
Yeah, I know you are. That's why I wanted to clarify.
Right, yeah. Don't get me wrong. I'm hyped for Batman vs. Superman. The trailers are great, but I don't need to necessarily see that. Now, will I watch it when it comes out? Yeah, because I'm curious to see what it is that would make this R-rated. Now, the chances are, I'm betting the chances are it's nothing real over the top. Even then, though, even if it's just something that's innocuous, I still don't see the necessity for something like that. But that goes back to your point about how are the studios going to say, hey, well, Deadpool was R-rated and it was such a huge success. Let's put this out and see how it goes. I think that's kind of them testing it. But then again, those characters like Batman and Superman or the Justice League, they don't need an R rating. There are plenty of
because I'm thinking, what are you gonna? Is he gonna like take his X-ray vision, his heat vision, and like decapitate someone? Like,
right?
Was that really necessary?
Right?
Did we need that scene?
Right.
That's where I'm kind of finding a disconnect with. What is it you want to add that is going to tell your story better that you couldn't tell in PG-13? Well, we'll see.
Right. We'll see.
Now I have a question about the Wolverine R rating when it came out on DVD. Did you have a choice to pick the PG-13 cut or the R rating cut? So that would be what we would hope that they would provide here.
That's what they're going to do with the Batman versus Superman. You'll have the PG-13, or you can get the R-rated extended, whatnot. Right. I did find that, and I always thought that Wolverine, was being his origins and his adventures in the comics, a lot of the best stories were kind of R-rated stories. He and other characters such as Spawn, Blade, those kinds of characters are dark. You kind of almost expect them to be hard PG-13, if not R. Those I can get with as someone putting out as R-rated film, because that's who the character is. Superman, Flash, Green Lantern, Thor, Captain America don't need an R rating. Okay, Spider-Man. Yeah, you don't need an R rating for those guys. And please, studios, if you're listening, if anybody is viewing this video, don't do that. Just don't. Just don't. Okay. Well,
let's give our ratings.
Yeah, we're going to give our ratings here. You'll see the ratings for me come up first on the screen. And I'm giving this film 5 out of 5 towers. I can't not give it 5 out of 5 because it hit everything on all cylinders, and I was not. You haven't heard a complaint from me since we began this video, so that should be of no surprise. And then RJ, you give your rating?
I'm going to give it 4 out of 5, and simply I compared it to other superhero films. It is its own unique thing, and I think as its own unique thing, some people are going to respond well to it and some people aren't. And so for that reason, it was not Spider-Man 2 to me or Superman the movie, one of those greatest superhero films I've ever seen. But it was really, really solid, and that's the only reason I'm giving it a 4 instead of a 5. So that's definitely, I think, from both of us, a high recommendation.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't seen it, go see it, and if you've seen it, go watch it again. And of course, it'll be on video soon enough.
That's right. Let's go into some of the final segments of the show. One of the segments that we've reached here in the show is called Take It or Leave It. And this is where RJ and I give you our opinions on some of the rumors, news stories in pop culture, movie, TV, comics, etc., and whether we take it or leave it. And I guess we'll start off. There's a backlash going on about the casting of Finn Jones, and you'll see his picture come up here, as Iron Fist in the upcoming Netflix series, as opposed to an Asian actor. Now, keep in mind that the character, as he was portrayed in the comics, was white, blonde hair, blue-eyed character, but a lot of people are clamoring for an Asian actor to play this role, and some people are actually very upset that Marvel did not cast an Asian actor as opposed to a white actor. I think this is kind of silly. To me, I would much rather have a role for an Asian actor that was created with that in mind, that is not going to be the stereotypical I'm Asian so I have to know kung fu type thing. I think that is an important aspect of the character, and plus him being white in the comics was part of the story in the fact that he is given this ability of being able to produce the Iron Fist, and he is an outsider. That was the whole purpose of the character. Sure, were there some stereotypical things? Yes, this was the 70s. I mean, this was the era of blaxploitation and kung fu cinema. So yes, of course, there were some things that were exploited based on race when this character was created back in the 70s when I was reading him as a child in the comic books. But in this regard, I think it's kind of silly. What do you think, RJ?
Well, I'm going to leave it. I kind of agree with a lot of what you said. I will say that in the 70s, in Kung Fu, these things happened in real life. I learned about Bruce Lee getting a lot of flack when he took on Chuck Norris as a student. A lot of people in the Asian community thought he shouldn't be teaching these things to white Americans, and that there was a cultural betrayal there. So I think if they can make that a part of the story, then you kind of have to go the direction that you're going. This is not, The Last Airbender, where they kind of whitewashed the cast. I can't get upset about this, because to me, if you can do interesting things with casting him the way he was originally written, then that's what you got to do.
I agree.
So I go leave it.
Yes, I leave it too. Next thing on the take it or leave it list is DC released Trinity headshots for the new Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, and here they are. You'll see them right here. I think they're really great. I like the way that the characters look. I like the fact that Superman's costume colors are brighter. I like the fact that they're kind of downplaying Wonder Woman being a Greek goddess warrior and having the American flag plastered all over. Like, that seems kind of out of place with a more realistic version of the character's origin. And then, of course, Batman is Batman, and he generally looks good most of the time. I think Ben Affleck is going to do a really great job as Batman.
I'm not a Ben Affleck hater. I think he's going to come in and do this well. As I've said to you before, Batman is not the most challenging role for an actor of decent chops, and I see no reason why Ben Affleck can't come in and knock it out of the park. Lots of people have done well with the character. He's certainly familiar to most moviegoers now. We get it. You don't need to get too much into his whole backstory. We get where he's coming from. We understand Superman now, and I'm really excited. I'm a huge, lifelong Wonder Woman fan.
Yes.
I like everything I've seen about this movie regarding her, and I like what I see with the clips that they've put out with her movie coming out. Is it next 17?
Yes, I believe it's 2017.
Very psyched about that. I think that her character is long overdue for a proper portrayal. I love the Linda Carter series, but it had its problems. And anybody, if you've not seen it recently, or if you just remember it from the 70s, trust me, it had a lot of problems.
Yes.
There's a lot of room for improvement, and I think they're perfectly positioned to finally give her the proper film that she's had coming for a long time.
Right. So if you get a chance, check out some more.
And the headshot looks good.
Yeah, the headshots look good, so we're going to take it.
Yes.
I think they're doing a good job. I really can't wait for this film to come out. In other news, the CW has announced casting for their new show called Riverdale. Now, this will feature modernized versions of the Archie Comics characters. A side note on the casting here, Luke Perry is playing Archie's dad. I have to say that I've got to leave this. I like the Archie comics coming up, especially in my teenage years. I mean, the whole teenage angst thing, I could relate really well. I remember the Archie's cartoon, singing along, all that kind of stuff. Wonderful, Josie and Pussycats, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think I want to see a modernized version of teenagers as these characters in today. I'm
just going to say, who are they making this for?
don't know. They're not making it for me.
Are there
but...
teenagers that need exposure to Archie now that we need to modernize? Because I'm like, I have no interest. I can't imagine people older than us, which really, Archie was after our time.
Right.
I can't see any of them getting at all interested in a CW show about a modernized Archie. I can't see teenagers. Are teenagers still reading Archie comics? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, most teenagers aren't reading comics at all. Just so you know, you go to a comic book store, most guys in there are at least like 30 and over. Right. And so, kids aren't really reading comics. So I don't even know who's reading Archie to even want to do this.
It's not quite Speed Racer the movie baffling to me, but it's almost there. It's like, well, who are they? Who's the audience for this?
I don't know. So I'm leaving it.
I'm leaving it big time.
All right, we're leaving it. So
I'm really excited we got this done today. I'm looking forward to doing more of these.
Yes, most definitely.
We got some fun things in store. We want to talk about it, or just kind of leave it as a surprise for?
We'll kind of leave it as a surprise for now, but let's just say we'll be interviewing some authors,
really neat people.
Yeah, and other neat people that are just authors, but we'll have a lot of interesting people on the show that we'll be interviewing.
I'm very excited about the next show, and the person that's probably watching. I'm really excited to talk to you. So
you know who you are.
It's going to be fun.
Yes. So what I wanted to do in closing here is we want to invite you to send in your emails to us with questions or topics you'd like us to address on the show. We'll then select a few of them to read on the next show we air. So send in your emails to the email address here on the bottom of the screen, twotowerstalkshow@gmail.com, where we will go ahead and take a look at what you send in and select a few to read on our next show and every subsequent show after that. Also, just to let you know, should you want to contact us, or follow us as individuals. We're both writers, both authors in genre fiction. You can reach me here at johnfallenwriter@gmail.com. You can also visit my website, which is www.johnfallenwriter.com. And you can also look me up on Facebook and Twitter. And and another thing, Two Towers Talk Show, we have a Twitter presence, we have a Facebook presence, and we also have an accompanying blog, which is twotowerstalkshow.wordpress.com. So go ahead and make sure you check those things out. And where can they find you, RJ?
You can go to rjsullivanfiction.com, and I will say that there's a tab that says Stock RJ. You go on to that one. It's got all those other things that have been mentioned, my Twitter, my Facebook, and the rest. That's probably going to be the easiest way. I imagine you'll have some of this in the description of the show, some of these links, the main ones like the Two Tower Talk Show and how to reach us there. So,
right.
We're just getting started. We got a lot of fun things ahead, and I'm excited to go forward and see where it goes.
As am I. And I want to thank everyone out there who watches the show, who's watching us. And I hope that we've earned your continued support and your continued viewing. Please subscribe to our channel down here. And let us know what you think. Please, we want to hear from you guys. And let us know how you like the show, the topics, and everything. And keep watching. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Two Towers Talk Show.
First episode,
that's right.
How cool is
that is awesome. It's very cool. So you guys take care, and until next time, hey wah.
The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by Showtime Cinema in Mooresville, Indiana. Their friendly staff is always willing to go the extra mile to make your movie-going experience an enjoyable and memorable one. Enjoy the comfort of their new cushioned seating in their spacious auditoriums, and while you're there, be sure to stop by the concession stand and purchase some popcorn where real butter topping is an option. They're located at 300 South Bridge Street in Mooresville, Indiana. We hope to see you at the movies.